Why do we find ourselves in the same situation over and over again? Making a change in our lives almost seems futile. In this video, I'm going to read from a lecture of Dr. Joe Dispenza on how you can truly make substantial changes in your life when you find yourself in the same unwanted circumstances again and again. Now, Dr. Joe Dispenza truly reveals the science behind reprogramming your mind in this lecture, so be sure to watch to the end of the video to truly understand how you can begin reprogramming your mind today to manifest faster. When people set out to make a change in their life with deliberate manifesting by attempting to change their thoughts, they often find themselves in an uphill battle with their mind. That is because your mind is like a computer and it operates on programming. And in order for it to accept this new information that you are trying to feed it, such as affirming your desire, you must change the programming that it is operating on. I'm going to read from an excerpt from one of Dr. Joe Dispenza's lectures that explains the nature of the mind and how you can change its programming so that you are no longer subject to past repeated patterns. Can you believe in a future that you can't see or experience yet with your senses? But you've thought about it enough times in your mind that your brain is literally changed to look like the event already occurred. The latest research in neuroscience says that you can train your brain from living in the past to living in the future. And you can fall in love with that vision to such a degree that you come out of your resting state and you change guilt or suffering into inspiration and joy and gratitude. To such a degree that your body, as the unconscious mind, does not know the difference between that external event and what you're creating internally, so that your body believes it's living in that future, in the present moment. And you begin to signal new genes in new ways to change your body to look like the event has already occurred. The latest research in epigenetics says that you can change your body by thought alone. Now, the reason this is because if there's physical evidence in your brain and body to look like the event has already occurred, your brain and body are no longer living in the past. They're living in the future. And you will walk right into your vision. Most people in this audience, all of you, have done something great in your life. You woke up one day, or you had a wild thought out of nowhere, and that thought was a possibility in the future, something new you wanted to experience. And the moment you started thinking about this experience, the moment you started contemplating this potential reality, you turned on a part of your brain called the frontal lobe, the crowning achievement of the human being. It's 40% of your entire brain. It's the creative center, and it has connections to all other parts of the brain. And the moment you said, what would it be like to be a leader? What would it be like to be successful? What would it be like to have this vision come true? The moment you ask that open-ended question, you turn on the part of the brain because the rest of the brain is just a bunch of automatic programs. And now the frontal lobe, the creative center, wakes up and it has connections to the entire brain. It's the CEO, it's the boss, it's the symphony leader of the brain. And the moment you get creative, the frontal lobe begins to select different networks of neurons that are stored in your brain from things you've learned or experienced. And as you begin to think of a what-if question, it begins to select these different networks and begins to seamlessly piece them together and making your brain fire in new sequences and in new patterns and new combinations. And whenever you make your brain work differently, you're changing your mind because your mind is the brain in action. Mind is the brain at work. And the moment those neurons fire in tandem, you get a picture in your mind, a hologram, a vision, an abstraction. And for those people who are passionate, that thought they're thinking begins to create an elevated emotion. They become inspired. They feel enthusiastic, in theory, filled with God. They become passionate. They started to open their hearts, and all of a sudden, they're combining a clear intention with an elevated emotion. And it's the combination of a clear intention and an elevated emotion in our research over and over again that proves that the person is now changing. Fundamentally changing, biologically changing, and internally changing. And their brain and their body are moving from living in the past into living in the future. When you do that, when you had that moment, you came out of your resting state, and then you started to write down all the things you were going to do to get that vision, all the choices you were going to make, all of the experiences or goals you wanted to achieve, and all of the emotions and joy you would feel. And when you were doing that, you set your sights towards that destiny. And then you did something really brilliant. You wrote down the choices you weren't going to make. You became aware of the behaviors you weren't going to demonstrate. You began to review certain experiences you wanted to stay away from, and then you looked at the emotions that would bring you to a lower level, and you began to separate the old self from the new self. And when you begin to do that, and you're observing the old self, it means you're no longer the program. Now you're the consciousness observing the program. And that's when you begin to objectify your subjective self. Now, let's say you've had some pretty rough experiences in your past, and those experiences cause you to feel sad and unworthy and guilty and judgmental, and you've gotten so used to feeling guilty and unworthy and judgmental that this just feels normal to you. And then because you feel kind of victimized, then you blame people, and you can complain, and you make excuses, and you feel sorry for yourself. And that's just your personality. And all of a sudden you say, today I am not going to do that anymore, because that is the old self. And then you start off your day, and it goes really well for about 2 hours. And then all of a sudden, the moment you realize that you're no longer making the same choices as the day before, you are going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to be unfamiliar. It's going to be uncertain. There's going to be some unpredictability. And we now know that people would rather hold on to their guilt and unworthiness than to step into the unknown, because at least they can feel something. And so the moment you stop making the same choices that you always make, get ready, because it's going to be uncomfortable. And that's the moment you are heading towards the new self. And we call it stepping into the river of change. It's kind of interesting because in order for us to have some type of change in our bodies, we must change something in our environment or even move to a new line of time. We have to forget about our present body, our present environment, and our concept of time. We have to become that pure consciousness. And you can't walk through the door to the quantum field as somebody. You have to walk through the door as a nobody. Now, consciousness is awareness, and awareness is noticing and paying attention. And that invisible field of intelligence, albeit spirit, the quantum field, universal mind, whatever you want to call it, is both personal and universal. It's within you and all around you. Now, the entire premise of what Dr. Joe Dispenza is saying here is that you must let go of the old thinking patterns, that you are your old self. You must step into the new self and create your own destiny. This is the exact idea that the 20th century law of assumption mystic Neville Goddard talks about when he says that you have to die to your old self to become your new self. This means that you cannot keep your old beliefs alive if you want to transform your life. The old stories must fade away to make room for the new ones. Now, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Please be sure to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Check out the next video on your screen about the hidden discoveries of Nikola Tesla and how you can use this further to tap into the quantum field.